I try to make this relevant. Sometimes we associate differences based on religion. This is my religious opinion, that's your religious opinion. Based on this, we've built animosity and division. And even on this, religion is not the element to divide. Religion is the element to unite. Religion is the element to unite. At one time in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Mecca, all 4 schools of thought prayed salah. It was inclusion, not division. And that's the whole purpose of salah. That you stand in row together to show your shoulder to shoulder that you are united. Not only are you united structurally, but you're also united in spirit, physically and spiritually. And that is hard. And it's difficult to win the heart of a person. It's not easy. To even win the heart of your wife, your spouse, your husband, your child, it takes a lot of strategic planning. Even then we fail to win them over. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم ولكن الله ألف بينهم. Oh Muhammad, the Prophet speaking to the greatest human, who has the greatest skills, the characteristics, that when you see him, you fall in love with him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is why the Sahaba say, Imam Ghazali has a statement, anyone that saw the Prophet accepted him, but the eye had to be the eye of purity. If you looked at the Prophet with the bias, you were veiled from seeing the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ. But if you looked at him with a rational perspective, your heart would open and accept him, because he was embodiment of perfection. Like Hassan bin Thabit says, وَأَحْسَنَ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَرَقَتْتُ عَيْنِي وَأَجْمَلَ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَلِدِ النِّسَاءُ خُلِقْتَ مُبَرَّأً مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَأَنَّكَ قَدْ خُلِقْتَ كَمَا تَشَاءُ. Any angle, any perspective, any age, any time, the Prophet was a person you enjoyed. One man was around the Prophet and he was staring him down. And Shifa Qadi Iyad writes this narration. And he's looking at him, looking at him. And the Prophet ﷺ says, مَا بَالُكَ يَا فُلَانَ? What's wrong with you? What are you stalking me for? Why are you looking at me like this? You know? And the man says, أَتَمَتَّعُ مِن نَظْرِي إِلَيْكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. I'm enjoying my view. I'm enjoying my view. You know? You can imagine a spouse looking at a spouse. What do you You know? The Prophet ﷺ, أَتَمَتَّعُ مِن نَظْرِي. I'm enjoying my view. This man, the greatest human ﷺ, Allah speaks of him. Addressing the Prophet ﷺ. He says, if you were to spend all the wealth in the world, what people normally do is spend money to win hearts. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses that concept, that psychology. He says, you think if you could spend the entire world to join the hearts of these people towards you, you could not do it. لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم. You could not unite these hearts. It is Allah that unites hearts. This is why the greatest sin is division. Because the hardest thing to build is unity. Even this takes force of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet himself could not do this. So this brings me to the 2 stories and concepts I want to share. One is, we build animosity on justifications. Say, yes, I'm right, they're wrong. Or, I feel like I'm closer to truth and they're on falsehood. And we continuously use these superficial concepts to strengthen our opinions of hatred, which is unacceptable. And I'll clarify this. The Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Waheed, and anyone that knows anything about Islamic history will tell you this moment was one of the dark moments of Islamic history in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It wasn't an easy time. It was gloomy, it was difficult, it was painful. And every time I read the story of Uhud, it makes me into tears, knowing that the Prophet lost his teeth. The rings of his helmet went into his jaw. He fainted. He lost his uncle. There's so much pain happening. The Prophet ﷺ, before the battle, he consults his companions, which is a leadership quality. You know, one is to dictate and one is to maintain a relationship with those who are with you. The Prophet ﷺ, though he could have dictated the opinion because he is given divine instructions, he never did this, subhanAllah. He involved everybody. And that's a skill of unity. La ilaha illallah. You know, we in today's meetings, through our meetings, we build division. The Prophet ﷺ, within their meetings, they brought unity. And those meetings which are lobbied, they bring disunity. And those meetings which are not lobbied and they're brought with sincerity within these ideologies and these rooms, Allah will spread happiness. Because there's sincere aspects of this. The Prophet ﷺ sits down and he says, tell me, what should I do? Should we commence this battle in the city of Medina? Because the Meccans are covered, head to toe. Or should we take this battle outside of Medina? The youth who missed Uhud were excited about this opportunity and said, Ya Rasulullah, you went to Badr last time. We want to take the reward of stepping out of Medina, and we want to battle this, we want to defend Islam outside in a place like Uhud. The Prophet ﷺ inside wanted to stay in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ negotiated the idea. And then the Prophet ﷺ went home, put his armor on, stepped out. In the meantime, the youth were given information that the Prophet ﷺ did not want to leave Medina, but he wanted to stay in Medina and then take into defense, because they had preparation in Medina ﷺ. Then the young men of the companions come, Ya Rasulullah, forgive us, we are ready to listen to you. And the Prophet ﷺ says, once the Prophet of Allah has put his armor on and the intention is made, there is no stepping back. And that is also a skill of a leader. Once the decision is made, there is no going back. Today's youth, are we sure we want ice cream or a smoothie? We're not sure. We're not even sure about the order of our drink. How are we going to be sure about the direction of our life? You know, we don't have any projected direction. What do we want? I'm not sure. Caramel macchiato or frappuccino? I'm not sure. I don't know what I like. The Prophet ﷺ was determined. This was the opinion of the majority of the youth, to involve their spirit. Let's go ahead. And in this battle, the Prophet ﷺ faced a lot of pain. And I'm not going to run you through a history lesson, but one of the biggest painful moment of the Prophet ﷺ was when he had to stand next to his uncle Hamza, who is also his foster brother. And he said to the women of Medina, there are people crying over the deceased and there are very few crying over Hamza. The entire Medina erupted in tears for Hamza. And to console the Prophet, Allah said to the Prophet, Asadullahi wa Asadu Rasuli. On the throne of Allah it's engraved that he is the line of Allah and the line of his Prophet. Loved. And when they put the body in front, the Prophet prayed for him. So brothers and sisters, when the Prophet went back, he said, that's it. I will not involve the youth in any of my decisions. He said, I don't need to. We saw the consequences of such an opinion. We're not going to do this. Sometimes we become more righteous than the Pope. We think we are more righteous. No, we're not. The Prophet ﷺ, who was protected from all influences, said today and from now, there is no involvement of these youth who gave me an opinion that caused harm to the Muslims. You know, when we think about 70 companions being martyred, we think, well, yeah, they just died, they were buried. No. This was the first tragic event of Muslims. So the Prophet was not used to seeing this, number one. Number two, the companions of the Prophet were like family, because the Prophet had left his family. Abu Bakr, next to the Prophet, was more than his uncle. You know, Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the young boy who got killed in Uhud, was a brother to the Prophet ﷺ. People used to resemble Mus'ab to the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ. One day the Prophet ﷺ was sitting, and there was a wave of people walking in the streets of Mecca, and Khadija heard a noise. Who is this? Who is this? He says, هذا Mus'ab. And the Prophet ﷺ, ما رأيت أحدا أحسن لمة وأرق حلة وأنعم نعمة من Mus'ab. The Prophet said himself, I have not seen anyone more handsome than Mus'ab, who wears more elegant clothes than Mus'ab, whose fragrance is more beautiful than Mus'ab's. This is Mus'ab radiallahu anhu. But when he's buried, he doesn't have enough clothes to cover his body. Doesn't have travel. So brothers, the Prophet and sisters, the Prophet ﷺ comes back, no involvement. Allah. And the cool thing about this is, you know, I want you to pay attention. This is our Prophet ﷺ. Everything the Prophet ﷺ did was monitored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The movements, the emotions. You know, I gave a talk once on the Prophet, the discipline of Allah over his Prophet ﷺ. You know, where the hadith goes, أَدَّبَنِي رَبِّي فَأَحْسَنَ تَأْدِيبِي. Allah trained me and He did the best training. La ilaha illallah. When is it you train your children, and when is the child being trained by such pious people? When Allah is training the Prophet ﷺ. And in this training, I'll share one incident, then I'll go back to the story. Is the frown of the Prophet. When a blind man comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he asks a question when the Prophet is speaking to the chiefs of Mecca, and the Prophet frowns. He says, really? It took me years to gather these people and to propagate the message of God. Here you are telling me and asking me for a question. Could you not find a better moment? The Prophet wasn't ignoring him, but was telling him, teaching him, please, not now. It's not the right time. It's like, Imam for Taraweeh, just getting ready for Salah, for Taraweeh. He has to read a whole juz. And someone comes to him, Sheikh, I saw this dream, can you interpret this dream? Come on, really? It's not the time. He's going to lead prayer. It takes a lot of character for the Imam just to look at him and say, you know what? Let's figure this out later. The Prophet ﷺ, number one, the man was blind. So even if he frowned, the man never noticed. But you know who noticed? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that frown was not only noticed, it was documented in the Quran for all of us to read. عَبَسَ وَتَوَلَّى أَنْ جَاءَهُ الْأَعْمَى. How can you frown and turn away when a blind person comes to you? La ilaha illallah. We're talking about the Prophet who has been directed and disciplined and nourished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perfection at the peak. So the Prophet ﷺ, his emotions are against involving the youth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals an ayah. And this ayah is very powerful. And he says to the Prophet ﷺ, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. O Muhammad, if it wasn't for your softness and Allah's mercy to make you soft, these people will never come around you. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. It is the sheer mercy of Allah that He's made you soft. So being a person of softness is a quality of Allah's mercy. This is why Umar radiallahu anh used to make this dua. Allahumma inni ghalidun falayyini. Oh Allah, I'm harsh, make me soft. Today it's a respectful thing, or it's something to look upon, to be aggressive and macho and mako. What does that mean? What does that mean? To be loud and abrupt. Umar was the most aggressive, and he used to make this dua. Allahumma inni, Allah, I'm rough, make me soft. And then I had pages of lectures prepared on the gentle giant, Umar bin Khattab. He was a giant, but then he became gentle. How does this happen? We know child psychology tells us that the mind and the mentality and the emotions and the nature of a child is developed at the age of 4 and 5. To retune and to rewire something at that age takes a lot of discipline. That you're rough and then you become soft. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, if it wasn't for the mercy of Allah, you would have never been soft. May Allah make us soft from inside. Say Ameen. May Allah make us soft in our personal matters and make us strong in the matters of religion. Say Ameen. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. O Muhammad, this is the Prophet ﷺ. If you are rough by your tongue, harsh by your heart, لَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ. Some people, they have a very sweet tongue, but they have a very bitter heart. And some people have nice hearts, but their tongue is untamed. You have to put a leash on their mouth. And they're just speaking. And a lot of men, they do this. They just keep on saying things to people, and they don't even know the pain that they're causing. So the Prophet ﷺ is being told, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were like this, irrespective of all the great miracles that you could possess, people will run away from you. La ilaha illallah. If you're the most handsome, the most beautiful, the wealthiest, if you had everything, if you split the moon in half means nothing if you don't have softness. The fingers giving water doesn't mean much if you don't have softness, because that miracle isn't sufficient to unite the world to you. It is a softness within you. Then the Prophet says, Allah says to the Prophet, فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. Forgive them. I want you to forgive these youth whose opinion that you took eventually led to the cause of many people's loss of life. And of course, it wasn't the youth's fault. It was a decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Correct? فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. I want you to forgive them. And the next part is difficult. It's easy to forgive sometimes. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. Not only do I want you to forgive them, I want you to ask me to forgive them too. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. And do istighfar for them. Oh Allah, my Sahaba made a mistake. You forgive them. And remember, once a Prophet asks Allah for forgiveness, they're forgiven. La ilaha illallah. One is I forgive you, and then I ask Allah, may Allah take you for Hajj too. Like, come on. What did you do? You hurt me. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. And ask Allah to forgive. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. And then number 3 is the toughest. You know, it's easy to forgive, it's easy to pray, but it's hard to involve. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. I want you to include them in your consult. You have to involve them. You can't move them because you cannot destroy their confidence. You have to involve them. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. And finally, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Once you make the decision, your reliance is on Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. And the Prophet ﷺ is trained not to, isolate individuals based on a religious perspective. La ilaha illallah. This wasn't a personal choice. This was a holistic religious perspective. This was a false or wrong opinion for a religious cause that caused harm. And Allah is saying, even in this cause, I want you to forgive them. I want you to ask Allah for their forgiveness, and I want you to involve them. Wow. If someone says something wrong to my son, khalas, that's it. That's it, it's over. Someone says something wrong about my family, I'm not talking to them. How dare you speak to my daughter like that? This is not the daughter or the son or one, this is 70 companions. So brothers and sisters and friends, this is the first perspective when we try to justify through religion that we can build relationships and destroy relationships. Number 2 is a personal pain. And this is none other than a story that always brings me pain and reminds me of the patience of one of the greatest women, and that is Aisha radiallahu anha. And we know the story of Bani Mustalaq. Aisha radiallahu anha traveled with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one of the campaigns. And in this campaign, Aisha radiallahu anha had to go relieve herself, and when she went, she either lost her necklace or got delayed in different narrations, and when she came back, the caravan had left. And she said that in our time, we were very skinny and petite in weight. We used to sit in a carriage, so the carriage would get carried and be mounted onto a camel, and they would leave. People assumed that I was already in this carriage, so they left. I come back, everyone is gone, I'm there in the desert alone. And I'm like, Ya Allah, I'm alone, what's going to happen? And I lay down, and I fall asleep. Young lady. Just to keep in mind, she was 18 years old when the Prophet passed away. So we're talking about a young teenager who is going to face such a challenge. I want to keep the age in perspective so you can appreciate the story. She says, I went to sleep and I hear someone say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. I hear a man doing the dhikr of Allah. And I look up, and it's Safwan bin Mu'attal as-Sulami, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ that I knew before the law of hijab. He recognized me, and he was worried that the wife of the Prophet's here, and there's no one to take her. And then he put the camel down. He mounted me onto the ride, and he says, Wallahi, the entire journey I only heard him say La ilaha illallah and the dhikr of Allah. We had no conversation. When these two people enter into Medina, the hypocrites of Medina, they ignite a fire of gossip, of accusations. Can you imagine an accusation on the dignity and the chastity of the daughter of Abu Bakr and the wife of the Prophet ﷺ? La ilaha illallah. Someone accuses your daughter, my wife, that's it, no reason to talk. So days go by, and the irony is, Aisha radiallahu anha has no clue there's an accusation happening in the public. She's not on a WhatsApp group. She's not following any Twitter feeds. So she has no public information. 16 days go by. And at night, she would go out with one of the women to the restroom outside of their home, the compound. And on the way there, the mother of Mistah, who is one of the accusers, the mother of the accuser, curses her own son when she trips. She says, Ta'isa Mistah. Mistah is destroyed. Aisha is so pure, radiallahu anha. She has no idea. She says to the mother, why are you cursing a man that participated in the battle of Badr? He's a righteous person. Not knowing that this person is part of the accusation. So innocent, so pure. You know, standing up for someone's right when they're not supposed to be cursed. She spoke up against her mother. Why are you saying this? And then the mother says, do you know what happened? She said, what happened? And then she said, I was on the way to relieve myself, and the Mistah tells me the story of the accusation in the city of Medina, and I fainted. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I lost the need to use the restroom. I came home and I started crying. And I only have 5 minutes left. But let's put one perspective together. Imagine the Prophet coming, Abu Bakr coming to Aisha and said, Aisha, if you did something wrong, we will ask Allah to forgive you. The Prophet sitting with Aisha and saying, Aisha, if you made a mistake, the Prophet, if you made a mistake, I can ask Allah to forgive you, don't worry. And Aisha says, you know, whenever I asked the Prophet to go to my parents, the Prophet would ask me a question, followed by the question. When I would ask, this was the following statement. Can I go, Ya Rasulullah, can I go to my parents' home? The Prophet would say, when are you coming back? Because he loved the relationship and the time he spent with his wife. This time when Aisha said, I asked the Prophet, he never asked me when I'm coming back. And that caused me extreme pain. That caused me extreme pain. The Prophet wasn't speaking to me the way he used to speak to me. My parents were ignoring me. The world turned against me, an innocent young girl. Innocent young girl. And Abu Bakr and the mother, Roman, would tell Aisha, just speak up. Aisha radiallahu anha says, why should I speak? If I say I didn't do anything, people won't believe me. And if I said I did it, that's putting a false testimony upon myself. So silence is the best choice. Let Allah make the decision. A month went by. 1 entire month. You know when you're accused, especially for a female, how painful that is? No, I know men have some dignity, but women have much more. Because their principle of life is based on their dignity and respect. Men's principles are based on some other elements. But it is a factor. And Aisha radiallahu anha says, finally, approximately 10 verses in Surah Nur were revealed to purify the chastity of the beauty of Aisha radiallahu anha. And Aisha radiallahu anha, when she was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, revelation started to descend. And the Prophet started to sweat. And Aisha radiallahu anha started crying. Aisha's mom started to cry. And the mother was crying because she didn't know what the verdict would be. Aisha was crying out of joy because she knew that this revelation will be my favor. Different emotions. And when this verse was completed, and the verses were completed, the Prophet looked up and his face was beaming with light, with a smile. And his glad tidings of Aisha, Allah has revealed and for your chastity and has given a certification of your purity. And Aisha is weeping. Can you imagine a month of pain because of the hypocrites and the accusers? Here's Aisha just weeping. Abu Bakr's, Aisha radiallahu anha's parents said to Aisha, stand up and go hug the Prophet and thank him. Aisha radiallahu in emotions said, why should I stand up and tell the Prophet and show my expression of gratitude to the Prophet? All gratitude is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has clarified my case. Why should I stand up? And that's the relation of husband and wife. Right? And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was disappointed. Because one of the accusers was Mistah, remember? And this person was under the sponsorship of Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu sponsored many of the immigrants that came from Makkah. The muhajirin who were poor, the immigrants who were poor. One of them was Mistah. Abu Bakr covered his cost of travel. Abu Bakr emptied his account 3 times. How many times? 3 times. Emptied every penny. Every dinar. One was in emancipating the slaves in the early days of Islam. Second, in migration. And the third is in the battle of Tabuk. The Prophet asked him, what did you leave for your family? He said, I left Allah and Rasul for my family. A great man. My eyes aspire to see him, honestly. Can you imagine what a great human he was? You know, that he was so sincere that he's resting next to the shoulder of the Prophet today. And the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Bakr, in the cave when there was no one there, أنت صاحبي في الغار وأنت صاحبي على الحوض. Abu Bakr, you're my companion in this cave. You're also my companion at the pond when I receive my ummah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. May Allah make us enjoy that sight. that the Prophet and his best friend are sitting there. Can you imagine? The Prophet ﷺ, it says about Abu Bakr that he never smiled after the death of the Prophet. 2 years and 5 months. 2 years and never smiled. He said, I lost my Prophet. Khalas. Can't smile. Can't smile. That's how much he loved the Prophet. Someone came to Umar and they said, Umar, you know what? Let's make it clear. Anta khayru min Abi Bakr. You are far better than Abu Bakr. You are greater and better than Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, Umar looked at him and he said, listen, Yawmin min Abi Bakr wa layla khayru min Umar wa ali Umar. Let's make the record clear, my friend. One day and one evening of Abu Bakr's life is better than Umar and his entire generation, and his entire progeny, which includes companions, the wife of the Prophet Hafsa. And that one evening was in the cave that he spent with the Prophet. And the one morning was when everyone fell on their knees when the Prophet left this world. And there was one spine to stand strong. And that was Abu Bakr, who said, the Prophet, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ, has left this world. And he took the responsibility of the ummah. Let me conclude this story. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says, Wallahi, I swear by Allah, the person that I had sponsored, I will never give him a penny from now on. لا أنفق عليه. I will not spend on him. I will not support him. He has betrayed my family. He has insulted my daughter. And above all, he has hurt the Prophet ﷺ. So he had a personal justification, and he also had a religious justification for this. And we always try to bring the religious aspect of it. We always try to justify our hatred to someone because we think we're better. No. Allah revealed the ayah speaking to this great giant. The greatest human after the prophets. Allah speaks to him. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, who is a teacher of Imam Bukhari, says this ayah is one of the most hopeful ayahs in the Quran. And I'm going to tell you what this is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولِي الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ. It is not permissible for those people that Allah has blessed, speaking to Abu Bakr, وَالسَّعَةِ, that Allah has given them wealth and ability to spend. أَن يُؤْتُوا الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْمُهَاجِرِينَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. They used to give to these poor and they stopped giving based on some issues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Abu Bakr directly and to everyone else, وَلْيَعْفُوا, forgive, وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. Safha in Arabic means paper. Safha means paper. Literally, this is what it means. وَلْيَعْفُوا, forgive and flip the page. La ilaha illallah. وَلْيَصْفَحُوا, وَلْيَعْفُوا, وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. And then comes the threat. One comes the direction and then comes the threat. Take this path, otherwise you'll have this problem. Allah says, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you want Allah to forgive you? And if you do, you have to forgive that person that accused your daughter. La ilaha illallah. I look up to the heavens and I say, oh Allah, this is the teachings of forgiveness in our religion. On a personal basis, on a global basis. Brothers and sisters and friends, Allah says to Abu Bakr, who all 8 gates of Jannah will call him, we will be honored to enter Jannah. Abu Bakr, Jannah will be honored to have Abu Bakr walk through the door. That's Abu Bakr. When Abu Bakr will go over the bridge of Sirat, the fire of Jahannam will become cool. That's Abu Bakr. Allah is speaking to Abu Bakr, أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Don't you want Allah to forgive you? Let me tell you the rule here, is when you're close to Allah, the discipline is even more difficult. حَسَنَاتُ الْأَبْرَارِ سَيِّئَاتُ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. There's a proverb in Arabic, that the righteous people are dealt different in the eyes of Allah. They have higher expectations. And Allah is speaking to Abu Bakr, I expect better from you. If you want Allah to forgive you, you forgive them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wallahu ghafur rahim. Allah is most forgiving. You have to understand and appreciate this story, that Abu Bakr was forced to forgive. Then Abu Bakr says, Wallahi inni la uhibbu an yaghfir Allahu li. He said, I swear by Allah, I wish and desire that Allah forgives me. I forgive the person who accused my daughter. And then again when he says, I used to give him this much, I will double my expense on him so I can get more forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. Brothers and sisters, these people were disciplined by the Prophet, and our Prophet was directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This religion is a religion of perfection and forgiveness. We need to learn how to forgive. And if we can't forgive, the least we should do is not harm those who have harmed us. Sil man qata'ak. Join ties with those who broke ties with you. Wa'fu man dhalamak. Forgive those who have oppressed you. Wa'ahsin man asa'a ilayk. And be nice and kind and generous to those who have been wrong to you. who have treated you wrong. This is the concept of Islam. If we can only treat people that have treated us well, then how are we ever going to build good character? I always say this, and I'm going to conclude. You know, we take checks at weddings, $100, $200. I say now these weddings has become business. It's not hadi anymore. It's business. वो हमारी शादी पे $200 लेकर आए थे, हम भी $200 गिराएंगे. 201 लिखना नहीं है. We're not writing 201. Equal. They came to our daughter's wedding. They brought this kitchenette set or something. That's exactly what we're going to get them. And if they didn't bring anything, just say it happens. I hope this never happens. If it does, if you went to someone's wedding and you took a gift, and they came to your wedding and they didn't bring you an equal amount of check, देखो कितने बखील है. क्या देखो? खाते पीते लोग हैं, हमको कोई हदिया नहीं देते. They eat and drink, they enjoy life, they go to Disney and they can't write $100 check. What does this mean? Was your gift ever sincere? Was your gift ever sincere? And I say this all the time. Everything has become superficial. Our relationships have become superficial. Our greetings have become superficial. Our gatherings have become superficial. Our dinners have become superficial. Unfortunately, even the Islamic events have become superficial. Where's the sincerity of friendship? Where's that time when someone does wrong to you, you said, you know what, give me a hug. Forgive me, brother. Forgive me, sister, I've done wrong to you. And sometimes before they ask you forgiveness, you give them a gift and say, I love you. Because loving a brother or sister for the sake of Allah is sufficient to be under His throne on the Day of Judgment. Allah says, وَجَبَتْ مُحَبَّتِي لِمُتَحَابِّينَ فِيَّ. My love is mandatory upon those people who love each other for my sake. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a heart that can forgive those who have harmed us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who do wrong to others to remove their harm and pain. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the difficulties and the hardships of the Muslims in Syria and Burma and Kashmir across the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them joy, give us equal joy, and unite us on the Day of Judgment with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakumullahu khair wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.
So our next speaker is Brother Haroon Imtiaz. The topic of his conversation with us today is our Messenger Sallallahu and the cardinal values he possessed. Just by way of very quick introduction, Haroon Imtiaz grew up in our community. You know him. He has been here many times. He doesn't really need introduction. He was born and raised in Michigan, earned his BA in Islamic Law and Theology from Zaytuna College and his Master's in Religious Studies from Hartford Seminary. So I invite Brother Haroon Imtiaz to this podium, please.
السلام عليكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah. I'd like to begin with the name of Allah, most merciful and most compassionate. Ask Allah to send His peace, His blessings, His mercy on our beloved Messenger, His family, His companions, and all those who follow Him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, up until the end of time. So, I titled today's talk, Our Messenger and the Cardinal Virtues. Now, obviously no one's wondering about the first part, but the second part, some of you may be wondering, well, what do I mean when I say the cardinal virtues? Some actually get this idea that cardinal, it refers to something in Christianity. Like for instance, you have in the Catholic Church, cardinals. There are people who are appointed dignitaries and functionaries in the Catholic Church who are designated to fulfill a certain function, like nominating the next pope, right? So that's one way cardinal is used, and that's one application it has. But the application of the word I have in mind when I say cardinal is something else. Cardinal actually comes from a Latin word which literally means the hinge of a door, which is actually pretty interesting. And the cardinal virtues took on this word took on this term, the cardinal virtues, and there's 4 of them, because they were seen as by many to be those virtues which a good life hinged upon. Like you have a door, it doesn't stand if it doesn't have the hinges on it. Likewise, many historically said, without these cardinal virtues, the human being doesn't stand. Their life is not wholesome. It tends toward excess. It's harder to live a balanced, healthy, fruitful, and even prosperous life if these virtues aren't there and serving as the substrate of our lives. And there's actually a lot of debate about where the cardinal virtues come from. And there's 4 of them. There's prudence, which is kind of like wisdom, but it's more like practical wisdom. Then there's courage, there's temperance, and then there's justice. And they appear to have their origin, and they appear to actually have their origin in a text that was written by a philosopher over 2,000 years ago. Some of you may know him. His name is Plato, and he wrote a text called the Republic. And in that book, what he tries to do is he tries to define what in his mind would be an ideal nation or an ideal state. And he argues that an ideal state or a nation in his mind would have to have these 4 virtues in place. So prudence, ideally the rulers have prudence, or they should. The wisdom to manage the affairs of the society. Courage, ideally the defenders of the city have it. They're able to, their bravery is able to defend the city. Temperance, it's something that pretty much everyone should have, in the sense that they don't intervene unnecessarily in the affairs of other people. They stick to their path. And justice, meaning everybody knows what their role is. So what happened afterwards is Muslims, Christians, Jews, so many people that came afterwards, they took these 4 virtues and they said, yes, these are powerful virtues. And if somebody really tries to embody them in their life, then they can maximize the level of satisfaction, happiness, prosperity in their life. And what I think is actually really interesting is, these 4 virtues, it doesn't matter what time period you grew up in, or what land you were raised in, what language you speak, what you believe in, whatever it is. We all can recognize these virtues as something that, as things that are good. It's amazing to me, I can read something that was written over 2,000 years ago, and it resonates with me. That shows something universal about the human being, that despite the externalities, despite how we've been nurtured, despite the society, the social, political, economic, cultural, philosophical context we've been raised in, anybody can come to these 4. Why is that? It's really something interesting. Like if I say, does everybody think wisdom is a virtue? everybody's going to be like, yeah. But if I say, do you think stupidity is a virtue? No one thinks stupidity is a virtue. If I say, you know, is justice a virtue? Oh yeah, it is. What about injustice? If somebody said that's a virtue, we'd have to get them checked out. So maybe, perhaps not everything is as relative as some of us make it out to be. But anyways, what I want to do in the time I have, I don't know how much I have, but I want to just briefly go through some of these virtues, describe them a bit, and hopefully paint some sort of picture of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam through these 4 virtues. Because in my mind, my estimation, I really see him as the ideal, archetypal, you could say, or the consummate embodiment of these 4. And hopefully we can see that in detail. So the first one I want to talk about is prudence. And prudence, it's what some call practical wisdom. It's not just wisdom that comes about through life experiences. In the sense that somebody is old, we say, oh, they have acquired much wisdom because they've lived long. They probably know certain things. They probably know a lot of things. But prudence is actually a virtue in which somebody who embodies it, they are able to act, or they know what the right action is in the right time, in the right circumstance, in the right place. They know what to say in the right place at the right time. So that's exactly what prudence is. And prudence is not something that's very easy to embody or easy to put into practice. It's a very difficult virtue. And all these 4 are actually very difficult in many ways. Because if you think, we all have moral opinions, right? We all have moral views. For instance, you know, we might say, you know, oh, it is unlawful to do this. It is wrong to do that. Lying is a bad thing. In the abstract world, yes, I think, okay, lying is bad, right? But what about in reality? That's in the abstract, but in reality, what if is lying wrong every single time in reality? It's always wrong in my abstract imagination. But in reality, can the attribute of lying change depending on circumstance? You know, and we actually do this. And for instance, like sometimes people ask us, oh, how are you doing today? How's it going? And perhaps you're not doing so well. And you say, oh, I'm doing well. Then you just lied. Right? Why did you do that? Because perhaps you thought, oh, I don't want to share this negativity with others, you know, so I'll just keep it to myself, right? So even we adjust our moral opinions real time. Our moral ideals in the abstract get adjusted real time. And this is not a bad thing. You know, some people say, oh, you're not being honest. Where's your integrity? But if we were to just blanketly take our moral ideas and just copy-paste them onto the world, there tends to be chaos. It tends toward injustice. And this is one of the things our messenger did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that he had a moral, theological, pedagogical creed that he adjusted real time. oftentimes, he had a way he would teach others. Like first, generally in the beginning of Islam, it was taught them Tawheed, taught them there's a life after death, the basic tenets. You have to pray certain times. Now, someone would think this is what you teach to every single person who you are trying to convince or persuade. But then we notice that there are instances, for example, the Prophet adjusted his pedagogical approach. Like a man said, I want to, Ya Rasulullah, I will accept Islam if you let me pray twice. I can't do the 5. It's a little too much. Now, if the Prophet ﷺ, he took that pedagogical creed and he just copy-pasted it in that situation and said, okay, so, it's 5, true Islam is 5. So 2 is probably not going to work, you see. So this is a type of prudence. He recognized that this person, if I say, oh, do 5, he probably won't be able to do it. He'll get gassed out. He'll probably leave. He'll think Islam is too hard. He'll think it's too difficult. So he let him. Now I'm not saying this is, 2 is okay for everybody. But it was something he understood in that particular time. He was prudent about it. Another instance of him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, doing this is when he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen in the later stages of Medina. And he said to him, and Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he was sent as a governor. Some of the emirs in Yemen, they asked for the Prophet to send someone, and he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And the Prophet said, teach them La ilaha illallah. And then he said in the hadith that when they accept that, then teach them the prayers. And then he said when they accept that, then teach them the zakat. When they accept that, teach them something else. So stages, step-by-step process of dealing with a situation that is different real time and requires prudence. And there are actually a lot of examples of this. And I don't think I want to go too much into this because I don't know if I have the time. But one of them I really like is, our Prophet, he oftentimes, he cursed a lot of things in general. Like the wine drinkers, the adulterers, those who stole, those who consumed interest, all these were things that he did in general, right? Like this is wrong, and the people who do these are probably going to end up like this. But when it came to certain situations, perhaps he would deactivate that ruling in real time. And so that shows a type of prudence, right? It's very interesting. Prudence also, I think, and this was mentioned by Sheikh in the last talk, is the ability to take advice in given situations, which sometimes I don't think we're always able to do all the time. And there's one example I really like in one of the battles. I think it was the Battle of Badr, where the Prophet, he wanted to post up at a certain spot and take over the well. And then Hubab ibn al-Mundhir, he said, Ya Rasulullah, is this military strategy, or is this you're getting revelation? Allah is telling you to post up here. And the Prophet said, it's my opinion. And then Hubab said, okay, Ya Rasulullah, I have a different opinion. How about we go to the far end and we take up the well, the water source that's in front of their camp, and we plug up all the ones before us, so they don't have access to water. And the Prophet, he consented to that. He realized that that was more practical in the situation they were facing. And so also raises a very interesting question, because It shows that not everything perhaps the Prophet did was straight revelation. He had opinions, which is very interesting to me. So the next thing I actually want to look at, hopefully I can get through most of this, is courage. And courage, I really like how one of a teacher at Union Theological Seminary, he defined it like this. He said courage is the great enabling virtue which allows us to realize other virtues. And it gives us the strength to look almost unflinchingly at catastrophic circumstances and muster a will never to erase or fully erase the fear we have, but to overcome our fear so that our fear does not have the last word in a given circumstance. And I think this is a very apt and appropriate definition of courage. And you know, there's this idea that there are like fearless people, that some people just have no fear. That to me is just, it's hyperbole, it's exaggeration. Everybody has fear. Everybody has their fears. You know, and if someone says they're fearless, if you were to just press them a bit, they would show you their fears. Like if you threaten someone's family, you're gonna see fear. If you threaten their income or their job security, you will see fear. If you threaten their children, you will see fear. It's part of the human experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. And you know, our Prophet ﷺ, we constantly talk about how he was so, despite the fact he got wahi, he was very much human. He had likes, dislikes, he experienced hope, sadness, despair, heartbreak, these type things. But when it comes to fear, we say, oh no, our Prophet was fearless. He could never have experienced fear, you know. It's like that seems to be something that's excluded. At least I've seen it. But there's much evidence to indicate that our Prophet, he did fear at times. That even in the hadith, when the angel came, he was terrified of it, of the angel, when the angel came down. And also somebody who was constantly on the run, or not on the run, I guess that's disrespectful. Someone who, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he, you know, as soon as he left, or from the hijrah onwards, he was basically on a hit list. And some say there were at least 13 assassination attempts on his life. You know, from Mecca on to Medina, and then even in Medina he had to encounter or deal with or confront a network of hypocrites there who were conspiring against him. So even though our Prophet, he exemplifies trust in Allah, trust in the divine, faith in the divine, faith in Allah, that doesn't mean, you know, he was you know, absolutely fearless. He said, don't desire to meet the enemy. لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو واسأل الله العافية. Because, like, you know, there's some people, they're so eager to fight, but the Prophet said, you know, you don't know what the result is going to be of your fight. You know, just because you think you have the power, the resources, it may not end up in your favor. And one of the things I really think illustrates the courage, you know, so our Prophet had fear, but he was able to overcome that in many instances. He knew, you know, as soon as he started getting revelation, those around him started saying, you're literally on a collision course. Like Waraqah, he said, you know, you're getting the namus, you're getting the nomos, which is the, in Greek, it's the divine law. Musa alayhi salam, he got it, and they treated him a certain way, they're going to treat you the same way. You're going to be ill-treated. You're going to be cast out. You're going to be persecuted. You're going to be vilified. All these things are going to happen to you. And this is at the outset. And now, some people would think, okay, if that was something I had to confront, then perhaps I shouldn't go through with this, right? But our Prophet's courage enabled him, and obviously the help of Allah enabled him to keep going, even when it was tough. And I don't have much time left. There's more I wanted to say, but that's okay. Hopefully this is beneficial. I think it's important to just talk about virtues sometimes, to describe them, because I think they're oftentimes not talked about. One of the things I notice a lot of times in Muslim communities is we keep kind of like ratcheting out the same type of discourse, and I don't know, it's definitely beneficial to a lot of us, but I go to many different masajid. I've been all over the States, and I see there's this very type of a similarity in discourse a lot of times, and I don't want to get too much into it because it'll distract from the topic. So the next one is temperance, and temperance has to do with moderation. What do I mean by moderation? Well, it's pretty straightforward. In other times, temperance actually meant refraining from alcohol. But temperance actually has to do with clinging to the middle in everything you do. And this is exactly what our Prophet taught. He used many words for extremism. He condemned extremism in many different ways. And so when I say temperance, I'm not just talking about, don't overindulge when you eat, when you sleep, when you drink, when you do all these things, but just in general. It's an indulgence that clings to the mean. One of the things I think I see, at least in our time, is the concept of sin, or the term sin. It seems to have been taken out of the vocabulary of a lot of young people today. And so when you go away from the meaning, it's kind of like, it wasn't a sin. It was like, it was like a guilty pleasure. It was just like, I overdid it. But is that the way we should look at it? Sin to a lot of people, it's like, a medieval term, medieval word, ancient word. And so I think we really need to adjust the way we look at this idea. The last thing I want to look at, the last virtue, is justice. And I know I don't have much time. I was hoping I would have gotten more time. Sorry if this is kind of rushed. But this is going to be the last one. And I saved justice for the last one because I think it's really embedded in all the other ones. Like when you're prudent, it seems to me that you are being just in a given situation. When you are showing courage, you are being just to your sense of duty. And when you are temperate, you're being just to yourself and the society around you. And so Aristotle actually said that it's arguably the greatest virtue because it's so complete, and you can identify it in other virtues simultaneously, concordantly. And that's what makes it so great. And it also has much to do with reciprocity, or good reciprocity. One of my teachers used to say, you can really summarize the character of the prophets in like one statement. And he used to say, it's idfa' billati hiya ahsan. That they responded, the reciprocity was always that which was better. And then it's فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كأنه ولي حميم, that so perhaps the one you have enmity with, the one who you're at odds with, will become like a close friend of yours if you respond properly. And so this is an incredible fact. But it does not mean, that we lean towards mercy, sweetness, tenderness, gentleness all the time. Even though our Prophet ﷺ, by consensus, he was a non-violent messenger. He preferred not to exhaust every avenue of non-violence before resorting to violence. Even though this was the case, he wasn't afraid to hand out justice when it needed to be served. And I'm sure you can think of examples of this as well. And I think my time is up, and I don't want to, belabor the point, because I know this is already a lot to digest. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. Inshallah, I can talk about this in more detail in probably like another format or something. But that's probably going to be it for me. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. السلام عليكم.
Alright, so this is our scheduled break. The lunch is here, I'm told, so you can go and grab it. Wanted to make sure to make this announcement to you, and maybe I'll invite the Sheikh himself to announce this conference.
Assalamu alaikum. There are going to be pizzas for the boys and girls, young boys and girls. So if you are waiting for the pizza, it's going to come in a few minutes.
Assalamu alaikum, just a minute. Inshallah, April 21st, our institute, Miftah Institute, is having this first annual conference at Kobo Hall. Sheikh Umar Suleiman is scheduled to come with Sheikh Abdullah Evans, and also our local scholars, Sheikh Ishtiyaq, myself, and my Mufti Abdul Rahman from the Institute. So we're going to have a 5-hour event on April 21st, which is a Saturday, from 5 p.m. to around 10 p.m. or so. So I request everyone that's here to please register. I have the cards here. This will probably be Sheikh Umar Suleiman's first time visiting Michigan in at least 3-4 years. So we're very excited about this, and the topic is mercy to mankind. And that will be the discussion, so please bring your youth, and there is also a babysitting available for the children. Thank you very much.